Today's thought's actually an extension of yesterday's, in so much as yesterday's obviously was a focus on reaching more people with a diluted message isn't really reaching those people. This time we're going to kind of build, as I talked about before, the positive case of focusing on what do we do with a smaller group of people who we're consistently in touch with or reaching. There's a quote for this that inspires it. It's actually literally, this is my old MacBook Air. I still use this as redundant recording computer for my meetings. But a quote I like so much, it was my bumper sticker I stuck on the laptop, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It's a Margaret Mead quote. It's actually a partial quote that's supposed to end in a semicolon. It then says, indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I love it. Of course, also, it got some vegan stickers and hugs, not drugs, and, it me. I was this guy. But anyway, still am. What I like about that quote is this reminder that when big things happen, that change how people see things, that change what people do, that change how we go about processes in our lives or addressing our needs or whatever it is, it really happens because a small group of people come together, consistently are working with one another, are understanding one another, are on the same page, have a shared vision, are making progress, are learning from each other, and that it doesn't happen from these kind of one-off, touch-and-go, random interactions that might be in a gargantuan crowd. Now, there's advantages, there's benefits, there's factors to consider in those various crowd sizes, but, it's the sort of thing that when people have an enormous following, quite often what happens is they're speaking to an existing base. Quite often they're speaking to people as they are. They're finding them as they are. In fact, for marketing terms, they even emphasize this point, that if the goal of marketing is explosive reach, then it's not about trying to change people's minds, change people's processes, change their habits. It really is about figure out where they're at and speak to that, because most people aren't going to change. That's the reality. That's fine. You could, basically, and it's not that they can't. It's not about insulting anybody. It's that many people don't want to. They're perfectly happy the way they are. They're perfectly happy with their interests, their hobbies, their habits, and that's why they are the way they are and remain the way that they are. But if your focus is really on, as mine is, trying to change people in a way that they want to be changed, in a way that they're on board with, not tricking or manipulating anybody, then the way to do that is really to focus on smaller groups, on how do you deliver higher amounts of value to a smaller bunch of people, rather than a very tiny amount of value, as we talked about yesterday, to an enormous crowd of people, in which, again, maybe you're getting an amused chuckle, maybe you're getting a smile, maybe you're getting sort of a moment's relief. And those things, they're not bad, and there's value of that in the world, and that serves a certain need. But that doesn't really cause people to rethink decisions. That doesn't really cause people to shift their path in a way that might improve the future opportunities, in a way that might improve their ability in the future to network or to build the things they want to build or to get their creative ideas out. Very sort of things that, again, in the same way as someone who's trying to maybe get the whole world more fit or get the whole world educated and learning things and excited, what we might call sort of the Bill Nye effect or the Bob Ross effect, where there's somebody who they are drawing attention to a field, but in a way that really is trying to help inspire people to change how they look at things. And I can assure you that in all those cases, even though they eventually gained a high profile of affecting a lot of people, gaining a sort of a legacy for reputation for a whole generation of audience, it certainly began in smaller circumstances. It began as a small group of people getting together, coming up with a plan, coming up with a strategy, coming up with a format, coming up with something they were going to do, working together on it, sticking to that, finding ways to make that work, finding ways to make it happen, even if it wasn't something that in the traditional structures of how things get sold or how things get put together. I think a lot of those sort of programs, they were PBS, they were public funded. There's a tremendous, great old interview of, speaking of these kind of influential people, Mr. Rogers. And I'm actually going to link to that in the description because I love the video about him passionately arguing in favor of funding for his show from for public television. And I think nothing I say is going to really do justice to watch that link down below in the description. It's worth hearing, but it's one of these great examples of, again, someone figured out that they were going to do this thing to help affect a lot of people, but it wasn't like their entire audience was putting together production. It wasn't like that whole crowd. It wasn't like the tens or the hundreds of thousands of people were responsible for building that content. It was, at the end of the day, a pretty small production. Himself and some others, the camera people, the writers, the other people involved in their programming, the puppet makers, who were responsible for building and crafting that program in a way that was able to do a lot of good. It started with coming from that smaller group of people. So, if you feel like you've maybe not got an enormous reach, if you feel like you've not got an enormous following, if you feel like you've got not a ton of connections, that may not really matter. That may not be as important as what can you do that's really going to leverage the strengths, the opportunities, the advantages, the perspectives of people in your network, people that you do, have contact with in a way you can kind of keep these conversations ongoing, a way you can kind of stay on the same page, stay on the same thread, get some things done, improve yourselves, and hopefully create something, whether it's a service, a business, a game, art project, a writing project, whatever it is, that's going to help change a lot of other people's perspectives. It's going to help improve a lot of other people's situations. That's stuff for today. Thanks for always tuning in. I'll have another video for you tomorrow.